think, one or the other. Okay. Okay, let's call to order the Planning Committee meeting of Wednesday, September the 7th. Can I have a motion on the minutes? Move seconded. All those in favor, contrary, carried. Our next meeting is September the 20th in these council chambers. And the first item on the agenda is an application by GBL Architects for the rezoning at 8880 Cook Road, 8751 Satiation Drive, from the low-rise apartment and townhouse housing, which is ZLR 32, the Brick House Village, which is the city center zone, to the low-rise rental apartment, which is a ZLR 44 Brick House Village City Center. And the recommendation is to give it first reading for the rezoning application, the providing affordable housing and our market rental housing addressing it. So with that, I'm going to turn the project over to Mr. Craig for comments and introduction on this one. Okay, we'll open your mic, Mr. Craig. You're on.
Go ahead, Edwin.
To the chair, I can give you guys a brief highlight of the project. The proposal is to replace existing 2 3-story apartment buildings on site with 100% residential rental development featuring 2 6-story apartment buildings containing 338 units, including 272 market rental units and 66 moderate income rental units. Moderate income rental is income geared rentals based on the household income limits published by the BC Housing. The proposed development is consistent with the market rental policies in the OCP and CCAP. The rental units will be secured in perpetuity through the rental tenure zoning, as well as a market rental agreement and a moderate income rental housing agreement registered on title. A number of large trees on site are to be retained and protected, including 10 trees in the central courtyard area and 5 trees located at the southwest and northeast corner of the site. Significant road dedication is required for road widening and frontage improvements on all 4 road frontages of the site. A surfacing agreement will be required prior to rezoning adoption for the design and construction of road works, traffic signal improvements, publicly accessible open space, and utility upgrades. Transportation demand measures are to be provided as part of this development, which include provision of car share vehicles and designated parking spaces, transit pass program, delivery vehicle parking, additional residential bicycle parking, electric park-ins for electric bikes, bicycle maintenance facilities, and space for shared bike and micro-mobility station. The project is required to connect to the city district energy utility and designed to meet the energy step code requirements. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay, are there any specific questions of staff?
Council.
Andy? No? Jack? Carol of staff?
Okay. I actually don't have any questions of staff. I have
Well,
questions.
okay. Anybody, Harold, anything of staff? Okay. Michael?
Great, thank you. Just but 2 questions I believe are best for staff. Could staff compare the moderate income rentals to the lemur option?
Through the chair to Councillor Wolf, in terms of unit sizes, we are achieving the same minimum unit sizes for the moderate income rental as we would for the city's low-end market rental housing. In terms of the rental rates and tenant incomes, they are slightly higher than what would be required in the city's lemur program. There is a table on page PLN 22 which provides the rental rates.
Okay, great. So I guess just a follow-up, if I may, through the chair on that one. Has staff reached, or has that been part of the discussion to actually have, like, if the the unit size is the same, could we not have some of those be in the lemur program?
Through the chair to Councillor Wolf, we've pushed the envelope very far here to provide as much affordability within this project as possible. The city's market rental housing policies do not require that the additional density granted for rental projects be for affordable rental. What we have done here is try and provide a balance of market rental and a new form of rental which does respond to housing affordability.
Okay, thanks. My second question, a short one. As is noted in the report on page 28, the significant tree and that's a cedar, and then right beside it, the shore pine. I walked the whole site, looked at every single tree yesterday, 146 trees. And those ones are very significant, but they are so close to Cook Road. And I know in the report it says that if they were retained, then there'd be 13 units lost from this plan. But can staff not see any other way where they could put the 13 units, like on the inner side of the buildings or somewhere else?
Through the chair to Councillor Wolf, there was extensive design work done around these trees through the applicants, arborist, as well as their designers. At the end of the day, in order to save those trees, there does need to be a significant setback from those trees from a tree protection zone. It would not be possible for us to relocate those units without compromising the building form.
Okay.
Thanks.
Okay, Alexa?
Thank you, through the chair to staff. Thank you for this. It seems that this project's been in process for quite a number of years. It shows that I think it was purchased back in 2019, and so they've been working on this for quite a number of years to try to get it to this point. So thank you for the work you've put into this. A question, it seems to me that all of the units are for a universal accessibility standard. So none of them are fully accessible, is that correct? Like none of them are wheelchair accessible.
Edward?
Through the chair to Councillor Liu, the apartment units, they are basic universal housing, so it should be accessible.
Right, but if you were in a wheelchair, you wouldn't be able to necessarily get into a shower or a bath the way it's set up now. Is that correct?
Through the chair to Councillor Liu, the basic universal housing requirements provide ample room for maneuverability of people within wheelchairs. What the guidelines do not require is counters that be designed to accommodate wheelchair accessibility. But in terms of space, wider doors, hallways, maneuvering room within the bathrooms, that is provided through the basic universal requirements.
Okay, and because these are rental units, there wouldn't be any opportunity for the user to be modifying the space, correct?
That is something the potential tenant would need to discuss with the owner of the building.
Okay.
What we would be able to do is through the development permit process, should the rezoning proceed, work with the developer to see if there's any way for us to accommodate some fully accessible units.
Okay, because just as I think as we're moving forward and trying to encourage all these rental developments, and if none of them are truly accessible, you're in a wheelchair, you've got kids, or you don't have kids, so maybe you need a 3-bedroom, maybe you don't. And I realize that it creates a logistical challenge for anyone running a rental place. That being said, we're seeing more and more people, especially with an aging population of, there are people in wheelchairs and the rest of the world is accessible to them. And if we're not building it in our community as these new opportunities come forward, we need to consider that. So, and certainly I don't want them to redesign their whole building now, but certainly if they could consider that in how they're putting in showers or creating, some facility for this. And as we move forward, I think maybe we need to think of how we then encourage future developments to then have a certain percentage of fully accessible, wheelchair accessible spaces, I think. And then how they go about finding those or renting to people, because I know it's been a challenge for people who are in wheelchairs. There was a thing on the news the other day about how this guy had waited 2 years and cried when he finally got a home that was wheelchair accessible. And my second question is for visitor bike parking. And then probably this comes in development permit stage, if it could be on the interior courtyard of the space so that it's more secure when people come and visit. I think if we're trying to encourage people to move around Richmond on bikes and to visit each other on bikes and do that sort of thing, if they can know that their bike is safe when they go visit their friend, that's a better setup than if it's out on the exterior edges of the building where it's more vulnerable. So I think just as we build for it, I tried to see it, and I know we're not at that level of detail yet, I think. So just another point, because I do see that they've raised it to 1.9 for the multiple units, the bike requirement. So I think that that's a really good step in getting people out of their cars and providing safe bike storage space for people. Thank you.
Okay, let's just make sure we're asking questions of staff, okay? Councillor Hobbs? Andy?
Yeah, sorry, just waiting for the microphone, Mr. Chair. Thank you, and through you to staff. Just generally before a question, I thought the report was actually quite interesting and looked pretty good to me, but just to clarify the length of time that this has been in the process, I heard a number of years and then I heard 2018. So is that accurate? This has been in the works for 4 years now?
Through the chair to Councillor Hobbs, no. The strata that previously occupied the site was dissolved in 2018. In terms of this rezoning application, it was submitted to the city in May of 2021.
Oh, okay, thank you. Now, if you could just clarify a couple comments that you touched on, and what I'm talking about is livability versus density versus, I think a phrase you kind of used was getting everything we could out of this site or this developer. And so, and I think you mentioned pushing the envelope. So in terms of maximum density combined with making a site livable and attractive for people that are renting there, could you just comment on whether we've achieved that or not, and if there's anything left to be gained in your professional opinion, having gone through this process, and bearing in mind keeping the project viable for the people that are building it?
Through the chair to Councillor Hobbs, I would say that the building form that's being presented to you today is a culmination of balancing a number of objectives, the existing environmental assets on the site, the significant road works that are required along the perimeter of the site, the ability to provide the required vehicle and bicycle parking, and the need to retain a maximum 6-story format in order to proceed under traditional wood frame construction. So when we look at balancing all those factors, we do believe that we are maximizing the density while also ensuring that this project does ensure livability for the future tenants of the development.
Sure, and last question through the chair. I think livability is a big feature for any development, making it attractive in a number of different ways, and I think it has achieved that. But just to be clear for anybody in the public who's listening, the idea of more density in building something like a high-rise or a tower.
Question is?
Yeah, that'll be a question. Of 10 stories or 12 stories. That is not feasible on this site. Is that correct?
Through the chair to Councillor Hobbs, the BC Building Code requires that anything above 6 stories must be constructed out of mass timber construction or concrete construction. In terms of construction cost comparisons, there is a significant premium over wood frame to go with either of those two construction techniques. As this is a rental project, we have balanced the economic viability against those forms of construction.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Jack?
Yes. Well, I mean, I quite like the project, especially the design of the courtyard and keeping the trees in the courtyard. However, I have two questions. Number one, how do you compare this project to other similar projects that we might have? I mean, in terms of deciding whether or not this is a good project, I think we have to have some reference to similar projects. So is there anything that you can compare to in terms of scale and merits and, you know, the format, everything? So any similar projects that we can draw reference from?
Through the chair to Councillor Rao, it's difficult to compare projects as each site and context are unique. Having said that, a similar 6-story wood frame rental project was approved by council on the former Bennett United Church site. That is a somewhat comparison, although that project has encountered its own problems. The other project that I would say has some similarities would be the rental portion of the Polygon Talisman project in Capstan Village. That is a similar 6-story wood frame development. I would say what separates this development from some of those other developments is the parking ratio on this site is significantly lower than some of the parking ratios considered on other rental sites, just given the proximity of the site to the Canada Line station.
So in
Mr.
other,
Chairman, Mr. Chairman, if I can add to that,
Yes, go ahead.
I think it's important to understand that this project exceeds your policy requirements for rental housing. So yes, they're taking advantage of extra density, which you've asked us to encourage. Yes, they're reducing parking, but 70 of the 320, 30 odd units are actually going to be something comparable to Lima, a Hills rate, so below market. You have to keep in mind that there are no condos in this project to subsidize the Lima units. This is a different animal. So this project would meet your policy if it was all market rental, but 70 of the 300 odd units are actually below market. So in that respect, it considerably exceeds your policy framework. And quite frankly, without big amounts of provincial and federal grant money, it really isn't possible to have lower rents in these sorts of projects. That the economics are just not there. And Wayne alluded to it, but we have seen 1 or 2 projects where council has issued approvals, similar projects. They are now struggling with the cost escalation for construction and that type of thing to move ahead. So, you know, it's kind of hard for Wayne and his team to, you know, sometimes it's hard to, you know, showcase what they've achieved, but I think committee should understand that this project goes well beyond your policy requirements for affordability.
great. And to follow up on that, so will staff consider that this could be an example or a model for the future similar projects? Are we setting some kind of new standards for similar projects in the future?
Perhaps I can tackle that one. Yes, this project is quite similar to the policy framework that you just put in place on Spires,
Okay.
where people are picking up extra density, but it's being tied to rental only, and it's also being tied to below market rental. And this is also a model that we're looking at very extensively in the OCP review, because at a staff level, there's a strong feeling and there's a lot of evidence that suggests that any new development potential that the city creates should be tied to affordable rental and affordable ownership only. Because if you let it go to condominiums and get priced in the market, it will be the same price as everything that's already out there. So it's very similar to Spires. It's similar to a couple of projects that you've already approved, and it's probably a decent template for moving forward with new affordable housing development in your OCP review.
Very good. Thank you for that answer. Now, then my final question is, since you mentioned Spice Road, so I just want to ask, in comparison to what we have passed before summer on Spice Road, if we apply the same standard as we have approved for Spice Road, will this particular project be different? I mean, in terms of density, FAR, I mean, will this project be different if we apply the same rules that we newly adopted for Spice Road?
Well, perhaps I can try that one again. It's really hard to compare because you're trying to compare, apples and footballs, right? They're a different animal. They're a different thing. You need to remember that on Spires Road, there's a core entitlement for condominiums, which have a certain value in the market rate. And therefore, that can help to offset some of the cost of doing the rental. So I would say this is 100% rental.
Right.
And about, if I could do the math, about 25% of it below market rental. So, it might look the same because it's all bricks and mortar and accommodation, but the economics of it are very different.
All right?
Okay, good.
Thank you. I've got a couple of questions before I go around again. I have some specific questions, if I may. The BC housing income limits, are they standard throughout the province? I mean, are they the standard throughout the province by which many will compare to?
Through the chair to Councillor McNulty, though they are area specific, so the rental rates and tenant incomes do depend on area. We are using the Vancouver rate in this proposal.
Okay, but sort of Vancouver, say Burnaby, New West, Richmond, they'd be similar.
Correct.
Okay, well, that's good. I'm glad to see that because sometimes when we see some of the rates, they fluctuate and we don't have them on it. I do have a couple of other specifics, if I may. The city's basic universal housing standards. I recall when Francis Clark was alive and we adopted them, and we were the only ones in Canada. I'm assuming that we're talking about corridors, doorways, bathrooms, counters are all sort of within the universal guidelines that we have in the city of Richmond, because actually we started the universal guidelines for Canada right here in this community. Am I not correct, just for the record?
Through the chair, yes, the basic universal housing guidelines deal with corridor width, doorway widths, maneuvering space within kitchens, bathrooms, low threshold doorways to allow for wheelchairs to access and egress.
Yeah, that was the thing I wanted. It's wheelchair accessible and on it, so that's a positive thing. I walked the site as well. With construction, what have you, the significant trees that were brought up, would they not be destroyed? And is there any guarantee they would live after construction, even with reducing the thing 13 units? Is there any guarantee that those trees with what is going to take place would survive?
Through the chair to there is always no guarantee that a tree will survive construction. Having said that, we do take extreme precautions and conduct extensive review to ensure that we believe that they are viably able to be retained as part of the development, and we do require provisions of securities to ensure that the developer does take appropriate care and attention when dealing with work around tree protection zones. We also require that arborists be on site when any construction occurs within a tree protection zone.
Are we not, on page 28, are we not getting a 3-for-1 replacement for 260 trees? And is not the developer putting a bond up of what, $150,000 for 15 of those trees?
Through the chair, in terms of tree replacement, the standard requirement is 2-to-1 across the site.
Right.
For the significant tree along the Cook Street frontage, which is proposed to be removed, that would come at a 3-to-1 compensation ratio. The developer has also agreed to plant 2 large specimen trees on site as a result of the removal of those 2 trees, and to provide a $20,000 contribution to the city's tree preservation or tree replanting fund.
Okay. The other question I had, given, and I'm hearing some of the comments, the Energy Step Code 3 is That's going to be within our city center district energy utility system? Will
That
it be
is
hooked
correct.
up, or will it be prepared to hook up?
Through the chair, they will be constructing a low carbon energy plant as part of this development and transferring ownership of that plant to the city.
Okay, all right, excellent. Thank you on that. And one other, if I can find out with the parking, and because it is, 3 blocks away from transit, well, no, 3 blocks away, transit goes right by, but 3 blocks away from the SkyTrain. Have we implemented our appropriate parking and bicycle parking regulations on it? Are we fair with that? Have we pushed that to the limit?
Through the chair, yes, we do believe we've pushed the parking relaxation to a significant level below what we would see in a market development. That is supported through the transportation demand management measures associated with the project.
And there is no bus stop just outside that coming down Cook, is there? The bus stop is on Garden City. I guess that would be the bus.
I believe there are bus stops on both roads.
Okay, I was thinking of okay, all right. Any other specific questions of staff, Carol?
Yes, thank
I
you
see
very
you
much.
for the second time.
Yeah, actually, this is my first time. I skipped the first. It's only my
Did
first.
talk the first time.
It's my first, yeah. Sorry to, I should have put my hand up earlier, but I wasn't sure. I wanted to talk about rents. On page PLN 78, it states that the average monthly rent for a studio right now is $950. And that is gonna go up under the moderate rate to $1,438. And I'll also just mention the one-bedroom rate, which currently is $1,184. That's gonna go up to
Your question of staff is?
$1,438. What would it be if we had affordable housing rates?
Through the chair to Councillor Day, am I correct to assume you're asking for what the rental rates would be for low-end market rental units secured under the affordable housing strategy? Is that?
Yes, the standard affordable housing rates, yeah.
Just give me a moment to look that up.
Because this is a significant jump from what is being paid right now to what is going to be paid. And I suspect that, I can confirm that, but the average size is also significantly different.
Edwin, do you have those rates?
Yeah, so through the chair to Councillor Day, the affordable housing rental rate for a studio unit is $811 per month.
And at one bedroom?
One bedroom is $975.
Right, and sorry, just gonna go one more then, two bedroom?
$1,218.
Okay, so $1,218, and under the moderate rate, it's gonna be $1,725, so $500 more, 50% more.
Where do you get that
almost.
number?
So why, I feel, given the history of this property, that we should try harder to get a taller building, similar to what is on the east side of Garden City, which is a much higher building. I realize it means it has to be built out of concrete or the mass timber, but I don't like this deal. I think that this is a prime property in the city center within blocks of the SkyTrain. And I just wanted to ask another question of staff regarding the history of this property. As we know, this was one of the properties that used the Bill 40 wind-up strata rules. And at the time, Mayor Brody wrote a letter to Premier John Horgan and said, and I just want to know if we had a response to this, the city of Richmond is concerned with potential impacts arising out of Bill 40 and the amendments to the Strata Act. These changes enable stratas to wind up at a vote of 80% in favor, and it may result in up to 20% of residents being forced to sell their homes or relocate against their wishes. This is one of those. I was at court with the people who were challenging it. Have we heard anything back about Bill 40? and if there's going to be any changes, because we already don't deal with properties being reviewed and rezoned if there was less than 5 units. But when there's more than 5 units, we have to go by Bill 40. Has there been any response to that letter from Mayor Bodie?
Through the chair to Councillor Day, the City of Richmond was one of the first, if not the only city to raise concerns with the province around those rules. And frankly, I still don't like them as a professional or personally. But what you have to understand here is that this is squarely in the province's jurisdiction. And to your question about whether the province has changed the 80% threshold, no, I'm not aware that they have. I'm not even aware of any intention to revisit it, frankly. But, you know, my point is that this is completely out of your hands. Now, when we brought a staff report to committee and council regarding this issue, we recommended that the city not process any rezonings until the provincial process has been exhausted and basically a certification is received from the court. And that is what the city policy is. And this application has been handled in accordance with that policy. So, you know, it is completely consistent with the policy. But the fact that some of the owners were perhaps not in support of the sale, that is a provincial matter. And we have lobbied the province, but they've not made any changes to that. And in terms of assessing this application, we received the application after the deadlines under the policy, after all the provincial appeal avenues had expired, and we processed it under city policy for rental housing. So I guess what I'm saying is, you know, some aspects of your concerns I don't much like either, to be quite frank, but we have followed city policy and we've done the best we can. And it's really up to the province to decide whether they want to revisit that 80% threshold. That is their doing, that is their call.
So my question is, given, I mean, this one stunk from the start. I mean, I met the people who were opposed, and I have the court document here. There was 102 units, and there was 13 that were against it, and 1 abstention. And they found out in court exactly what you just said, Mr. Erk, that there's very little they can do. But given that there were a number of bad things that happened with this rezoning with Rinnie and Associates, I wonder if we couldn't leverage that to accomplish 2 things. 1, potentially lower rental rates, and 2, I think that we should reconfigure the design so that instead of taking out those significant trees and creating a huge apartment block, I would like it to see a smaller footprint, more green space, and have it taller, and then negotiate some real affordable rentals, because the rates under moderate rent are far from affordable housing rates and far from the average monthly rates that are being charged right now in that building, those buildings.
Okay, thank you for that. Okay.
So I just asked staff, could we not use this as leverage to try harder and take another kick at the can at this? Because I'd like to refer this back so we can have another opportunity to challenge how this went down.
Are you making that a referral?
I would like to make a referral, yeah.
Moving that? Are you moving that?
Yes, moving the referral.
All right, Councillor Day has voted to refer it back. Is there a seconder from the committee?
Second.
Second by Harold. Okay, propriety of referral. Seeing no discussion, all those in favor of referral? Those in favor of Councillor Day and Councillor Steve, those opposed? Myself, Councillor Au, Councillor Hobbs, and Councillor Liu. I would move the staff recommendation. If I can get if there's a seconder. You seconded it? We'll move and seconded. I think we've had lots of discussion on this. Okay, any other final comments? Harold?
Yeah.
Yeah,
I haven't spoken on it.
Thank you. Yeah.
I read this report very carefully. I have a friend that lives in a strata development similar to this, and they went through the same thing with developers trying to buy them out. They didn't quite get the 80%. What happened, however, was that they had to pay $40,000 per unit to renovate their building to stay there. Some people that stayed couldn't afford it. This is what people are faced with.
Yeah.
When the units and strata units get older, you've got to be able to spend the extra money to renovate. Otherwise, you got to settle the low price. And I don't like it. I don't think we have to approve it. And I think we should get a much better, more reasonable housing rates with the low-end market housing out of this, because the way it's done, whether it's a provincial responsibility or not, we don't have to vote for it, and I don't intend to.
All right, seeing none. Carol?
Yeah, I won't be supporting this either, because this is yet another example of a critical property in the city center, blocks away from rapid transit, and this is an easy build for ever bright properties. But between Rennie and Associates really putting the screws to the people who live there, and I met them, I know what they went through, I went to court with them, and now seeing this, I think we can do better, and it's our job as councillors to get the best possible option. I'm not happy with this one. I think we can do better, and that's why I wanted to refer it back. So unfortunately, while I support having 100% rental, I'm really happy about that, I think we could do better on this one, and I won't be supporting it. I want to hear what happens at public hearing, though, because I bet other people will feel the same way.
Okay, Councillor Lou? Alexa? Sorry.
Thank you. This one's obviously a tough one. There were people that feel like they've been displaced and it didn't go down necessarily the way they wanted to when the strata wound up. I live in a strata. I don't think any of the rest of you guys live in stratas. And my strata fees in the last 5 years have doubled because of the insurance rate. So the amount of work that needs to get done within a strata, and our strata is very well maintained, and our insurance rates have doubled in just a couple of years, and they're going up precipitously because unless people do the fixes on their places. So it's kind of a tricky place that we're in, and if we don't move forward with some of these projects, we don't have any more rentals. And if we delay it, it's not going to be more affordable. It's only going to slow it down and create more cost to the developer and to just the cost of building it, and which will not make it more affordable. So I think we need to move forward with this one. I think we've also done a lot of work on our own as the City of Richmond to try and make sure that people are treated correctly when a strata winds up. So I will be supporting this one.
Okay, Councillor Hobbs?
Thank you, and through the chair. I'll be voting in support of it, but I mean, there are some concerns that have been raised, but my concern is when we talk about doing more, and I've heard that a few times since I've been on council, and I think we should do more whenever we can and should have more affordable housing when we can, but this is a project that I've heard described by staff and in the report as kind of achieving the maximum achievable benefits in terms of 100% rental, moderate income, consistent with city policy under the guise of provincial legislation, which we have no control over. And apparently there's no intent on the horizon of the province to be changing this legislation. It's rental that's secured in perpetuity. So is it perfect in everybody's mind? No. Did you have 100% agreement with the strata in terms of its wind-up process? No. But those are things that are beyond our control. So it seems to be in compliance with all of our policy, all provincial legislation. And when I look at the few of the 100% rental projects that I am aware of in the city right now, I know of one being finished at 3 and Williams. I know of one that is, perhaps going to be done and perhaps not because of escalating costs and different issues to do with it. And you have this one, which I understand from the report and from staff, that has pushed it to the max in terms of the site and what can be done in terms of 100% rental and achieving a building that we all talk about achieving, 100% rental buildings. Now that can be a combination of market rental and moderate or subsidized rental. But this is one piece of the component that I think helps us with the housing continuum that we need to achieve in Richmond and throughout the Lower Mainland. So I'll be supporting it for those reasons, notwithstanding some of the good points that have been made. Thank you.
Chuck?
Yeah, I'm in support of this project. I understand that for a project like this, it's always very complex, right? You have to talk about trees, the density, the footprint, everything. And sometimes I think it's very difficult to juggle everything into the perfect formula. So I think somehow we have to make a decision on whether or not we should move forward. And I think we should move this forward for the reason that this is a new thing. This is 100% rental, and this could be an example that we can use in the future to encourage this kind of buildings, 100% rental buildings. And secondly, I think yes, we may not have the limits we would like to have, but having this category of moderate income rental units, I think it adds to the variety of rental supplies in the city. So I think it's always a good thing that we have different types of supply. And to refer to spec and to design the whole thing again for one reason, that could also impact on the other aspects of the project. We may say, okay, we can be taller and be on one building, but what would be the other impact on the other aspects of the design? So I think it's difficult to find a perfect formula and the perfect balance, but I'm satisfied with what we have in front of us, and I will support this moving forward, knowing that we can always improve, but to delay this further until we don't know when would not be to the benefit of the city and to our people.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to support it. We supposedly have a rental crisis and a housing crisis in Richmond, and this could be plus 338 units. But it's 2 to 3 years away. It's not going to happen tomorrow. And the longer we hold it up, the more we have a crisis with rental in it. And we can't redesign things in midstream. It's not the way we were to do things. And I think staff have come with their best foot forward and said we've squeezed as much water out of the rag as possible, so to speak. We've gone beyond our policy framework. We've stretched it, maxed out. I think that there are a lot of good things in the project. And yes, the process may be, one of the things I don't think we should be doing is correcting the provincial flaws. If we want to correct the provincial flaws and the stuff that they're not doing, then we should be addressing those directly with them. And I'm not saying we shouldn't, but we need to identify the mess that they've got in, and they keep going. It's sort of like us saying, well, we should correct what job the ALC hasn't done. That's something that I think we need to get on with it. And given what I've seen in front of us, I think it's the best we've got. This is just the start, hopefully, of many developments that are going to be good and give us the units. When you look at rents in 2026, I doubted if any of those maximum or minimum rents are going to hold water. If you can get something for that in 2026 when this is built out, boy, consider it a blessing, because it won't be. I don't know how the developer is going to handle it, but that's their problem. We don't have to correct that either. So we need to support it. All right, given that everybody has spoken, I'm going to call the question on the resolution as stated in the book to give first reading. So all those in favor? Those opposed? Councillor Steves and Councillor Day opposed. That's carried. Okay. All right. Item number 2 is that will go to council next Monday, I guess it will be. Next item on the agenda is the rezoning of 8580 bylaw 10126 for the rezoning at 7600, 7620 Ash Street from RS 1F zone to a single detached RS 2E and a single detached ZS 14 South McLean City Center zone, and that be introduced and given first reading. And Mr. Craig, you're on that one.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I will be
Sorry,
providing
Nathan.
a summary for this item, and just wanted to highlight that the rezoning is to facilitate the subdivision of 2 single-family lots into 5 single-family lots, with 2 lots on the western portion of fronting Ash Street, and 3 lots on the eastern portion fronting an extension of Armstrong Street. This complies with the McClellan South Sub-Area Plan. 2 single-family dwellings currently exist on the western portion of the sites and are owner-occupied. Staff worked with the applicant team to ensure that the proposed Lot 5 building envelope has purposely modified to facilitate the retention of a hedgerow and 1 neighboring tree located along the south property line. A legal agreement will be registered on title as a condition of rezoning and subdivision to ensure that the tree protection zones and additional setbacks are maintained for this lot. A variance is also requested in order to retain an existing detached garage at the rear of the proposed Lot 1 to comply with zoning. The proposed variance must be issued by council prior to subdivision approval, or the detached garage must be removed or relocated. Consistent with the affordable housing strategy, 2-bedroom secondary suites will be provided on lots 1 and 2, and minimum 1-bedroom secondary suites will be provided on lots 3, 4, and 5. And lastly, 1 city tree, 3 on-site trees, and a hedgerow are to be retained, along with a minimum of 2 replacement trees are required per lot for a total of 10 new trees. Happy to answer any questions.
Okay, do we have any questions on this? All right, seeing none, I would move the recommendation. Second? Any further discussion? All those in favor? Contrary? Carried. Then we'll go forward. Thank you. The next application is Gurtendorf's Flowerland Nursery for an agricultural land reserve not inhering residential use to allow addition to an existing family dwelling at 140 Westminster Highway for the purpose of accommodating accessibility features, and to be forwarded to the ALC. I would so move that. I second it. Do we need discussion on this? Just a question of staff. For something of this nature, I was going to ask Harold actually, do we need to go to the ALC for improvement for, and I'm not going to say this, but I would call it a medical kind of purpose where people are wheelchair or to get in, et cetera, on that?
Through the chair, yes, this application, we have discussed it with ALC staff. It does require their approval as well as city council approval. Subsequent to council and ALC approval, the site would also require a rezoning as the existing secondary dwelling is no longer permitted in the city's AG1 zone.
Okay, it's a dwelling as well as the accessibility. Okay, thank you. Harold?
Yeah, I just wanted to comment on this. I'm definitely in favor of it. But you'll notice in the report it says that it doesn't meet today's zoning requirements. In other words, it's got an extra house. Things that were permitted before we started fighting mega mansions. And this is the kind of development that Richmond was doing before we got literally became under attack from those that wanted to build the big houses and the country estates. And I think it's quite reasonable what we're being asked for here. We have somebody in the secondary house using a wheelchair, and if the rest of the mega mansions didn't exist, this would be the norm.
Yeah.
And I think it's important to recognize that here's a farmer that's doing everything we've ever asked for them, and I think it's a good one to send to the Land Commission and say, yes, it doesn't meet the today's rules, but certainly it meets the rules that we intended for the agricultural land reserve in the first place.
Good. Excellent. Thank you. Carol?
Yeah, thank you very much. Through the chair, to staff, I was just a little confused about, because it's two homes now, are you saying it has to be subdivided? Am I understanding that correctly? No.
Through the chair to Councillor Day, no, a subdivision would not be required, but because the city zoning bylaw only allows one dwelling unit per AG1 property, we will need to rezone the property to authorize the addition to the existing dwelling.
Okay, so we're not creating two city lots, we're just rezoning to allow what is already there, actually.
And the addition, yes.
Just a quick question through you, Mr. Craig. Can the applicant apply for rezoning concurrently while this is gone? Assuming that they've already sort of basically got the nod?
Through the chair, yes, we could consider a rezoning application. Obviously, we would not be able to forward that rezoning application to council for consideration until such time as we do have a decision from the Land Commission.
Okay, well, maybe the applicant take that under advisement. Okay, all those in favor? Opposed, if any, carried without dissension. Well done, it's on its way. Okay, manager's report.
Good.
Since we haven't seen each other for a while, anything?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I do have a couple of updates for committee. First, I'll start with a staff introduction. Ashley Kwan, who Ashley will turn on her camera here in a minute. Ashley Kwan has joined the development applications team as in the capacity of a planner one. Ashley has been with the city for some time, working in the building approvals division prior to moving up to development applications.
Okay, welcome, Ashley. Look forward to working with you.
The second update I have is related to an existing rental housing project in the city. Councillors would have received a memorandum from myself regarding an update on the Brighouse United Church site earlier in August. At that time, the church had indicated that they were looking for a development partner to potentially adjust the application to a 100% market rental development. The church informed staff last week that unfortunately they have come to the conclusion that they must divest themselves of the property. They are currently marketing the property for sale. The existing rezoning application will be held open. Pending the sale, it will be up to the purchaser of the site to determine whether or not they proceed with that application or some other alternative form of development.
I have a question.
Go ahead, Carol.
Sorry. Is there any way we could have helped them to find a partner, whether it's federal, provincial, or potentially like a union, what do you call it, pension fund?
Pension fund.
Through the chair to Councillor Day, all of those efforts were undertaken by staff. Staff did have conversations with BC Housing. We also tried to put the applicant in touch with other funding options available through CMHC. Unfortunately, none of those funding options were available. The church has other projects ongoing throughout the region and came to the conclusion that due to their dwindling congregation here in Richmond, that it was in their best interest to sell the property and focus on their other land holdings in the region.
Well, thanks for working on that and trying to find them a partner.
Okay, anything else from anybody?
Yes, Mr. Chair, I'd like to provide a quick update to the committee if possible, just on the Metro Vancouver Regional Growth Strategy process. So at the Metro Vancouver board meeting on July 29th, they considered a report summarizing local government acceptance of Metro 2050. Staff did circulate a memo to council, but I thought I would just quickly summarize what was in that report. The report identified that 22 of the 24 signatories having accepted Metro 2050, with the Township of Langley and City of Surrey opposed. So at that meeting, the board resolved to request the Minister of Municipal Affairs to initiate a non-binding resolution process to attempt to reach acceptance on the outstanding concerns, and to request the Minister to appoint a facilitator for the adoption process, and direct Metro staff to engage with the Township of Langley and City of Surrey to explore options that would resolve the noted outstanding concerns. And while there are only two objecting parties, all affected local governments, including Richmond, will be able to participate either as an observer or as a participant in the process. And after the process has been completed, should consensus be reached and there are amendments necessary to Metro 2050, all local governments, including Richmond, would have a second opportunity to consider acceptance of Metro 2050. And during that 60-day period, only those provisions that have changed can be considered. So just wanted to provide an update to committee and happy to answer any questions.
Okay, any questions of staff? Any other reports? All right, seeing none, we're motion to adjourn. We have an in-camera. Move seconded. All those in favor? Contrary carried. We are adjourned. Okay, we'll take 2 minutes to close the doors and then we'll go to our in-camera.